So my name is Mark Zaccaris. I run our ML AI practice at Epsilon. Been here for about 5 years. Prior to that, I actually spent 10 years at Dell as the head of the marketing tech group down there. So I heard Dell's here. I met one of the gentlemen yesterday. So can't wait to see what's going on down there with the gamification stuff. That'd be interesting to hear what's going on there. So been in this space for quite a while now. My team and I, we've probably been working in AI for 10, 15 years now, so have a lot of experience here. Happy to answer any questions you have. Hopefully we'll cover some of that today. Go through a couple of use cases and talk about some scenarios that we've worked on with our clients. Yeah, so I hear this all the time. When's Skynet taking over? When's Elon Musk and all the robots taking over? Like, just relax, that's not here yet. So I'm not saying it's not coming, but there's definitely, it's not Skynet yet. You heard only 36%. I would say that's probably pretty high estimate in some
across all business functions. So that's
yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just saying, like, there's a great article out there that I read that said machine learning is the new death by PowerPoint. That everybody has it in their slides, everybody talks about it, but rarely is anybody ever actually doing it. They think that because they've written some models and algorithms as sort of a data scientist or in analytics, that all of a sudden they're machine learning experts. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today and how to differentiate those. I got to get my steps, so let's share some time over here now. So the great thing about machine learning, and Emily talked about it a little bit, is just the ability to scale. We've been doing analytics for a really long time. Machine learning's been out there for a really long time. I was chatting last night, and the first chatbot was actually that could mimic humans was developed in 1962. So it's not like it's new technology, it's just never really been used in marketing. It's been used in things like manufacturing and logistics. But what it's allowing us to do now is scale at an enterprise pace. We've always had analytics, we get a lot of reporting, and that's where it usually ends, is you get some sort of data report with some visualization tools, and you can take that and show it to your executives, but then how do you action on it? Like, how do you immediately turn that dial and make it go? And that's what machine learning is able to do now. You have the ability to connect these applications directly into your channels: email, website, call center. I'm losing my voice. I think my allergies are killing me, so pardon me. So yes, you heard Emily also talk about this. It's very overhyped. So you can see, like, at the top of the peak of hype here, it's at the top of everything: cognitive learning and deep learning and machine learning and all of that. But I think we'll see over time that will gradually become more mature. I think Emily touched on that. You'll start seeing more and more companies find ways to embrace it and really welcome that into their enterprise. So I'm a car guy, so this really rings true to me. I like to think of machine learning as autonomous marketing, meaning if you think about Tesla or any other self-driving car, those vehicles have all the underpinnings of what it takes that we would use inside of marketing. It has cognitive, it has AI, it has machine learning, and there was an article, video done by Motor Trend anyway, not a big deal, but they took a Tesla out in New York City, and it was under construction, and the gentleman that was writing the article was in the driver's seat, and the guy from Tesla said, "Okay, let go of the steering wheel, let the car go." So the car drove through all the cones and around everything, and when they were done, he said, "Well, so what do you think?" And the guy said, "I was scared crapless," we'll just say that. and frankly, that's how you're gonna feel. That's how marketers are gonna feel. Like, the moment you have to let go of merchandising and campaign development and segmentation, and you're gonna let something else take over, you're gonna be scared crapless too. I mean, I've been doing this for a while, and these are typical things that we run into, but it's okay. Don't freak out. There's ways to control machines and the ways to use them, and there's Emily touched on it, and I'm going to touch on it, is sort of the dynamic shift of what people are doing in marketing and how to allow machines to take over the process-oriented work, and you can get on to bigger and better things. So let's talk about some of the changes that are sort of coming for marketers. First, I love this quote because machine learning is definitely not a straight line. So before, you'd have a vision, a goal, a business goal, and you could create a campaign, a segment, and head straight for it. that's not really how machine learning actually works. There's lots of iteration, and you have to have a tolerance for failing. Machines will fail, but because they're a learning application, they also win a lot too. So it takes time to have iterations of that. So we have a concept here that I love that Kevin's team's here from our analytics group, because we're going to talk a little bit about that, about your ability to have like a testing lab approach to this before you put things into production and allowing the machine to take over. So let's touch on some of these. We'll go through them. You know, I want to get to the use cases because I know that's where everybody likes to hear, but let's spend a little time on some of the changes you're going to see across your digital transformation. In the middle here used to be what everybody used to call like personalization. That was the buzzword, right? I mean, come on, show of hands. Who said use personalization at some time in their business, right, everybody? Yeah. Well, now personalization is kind of being taken over by machine learning. Machine learning can actually handle and scale the majority of those personalization efforts. But what it's also doing is disrupting all these other things in the digital transformation stack. It's disrupting content management. It's disrupting marketing automation. It's disrupting your analytics group. Not always in a bad way. It's usually doing it in a good way, but it does, like I said earlier, it takes a little bit of a tolerance to get through the change. So let's touch on a few of these. First is around data. So I know Emily touched on this a little bit, and it's not, she's telling you a true story, and actually it's probably worse, is that every data source that a business that I talk to has wants to shove everything into machine learning. Like we build up a machine, and the moment they start seeing insights that the machine can quickly spit out about things that they've learned, like the type of car you drive has an influence on the type of shopping that you do. So for like, I'll pick on Dell since I spent time there, but you know, does the Honda Accord you drive affect the fact that you might buy an Alienware laptop, right? Your ability to find those insights can come like that, instantaneously. I work with a large airline, and we've integrated machine learning in 6 channels. It makes decisions in 62 milliseconds. So if you want to know how fast these things work, they work really fast. But everybody wants to shove all the data in. And to some extent, that's okay. Some applications can handle that, but it does need to be staged a little. Like there's things like even null values in your data sets can actually break some of the model learning that it has. The other thing is around the ability to detect the anomalies in the data. So having the lab approach that we'll talk about provides for this. It sort of sits parallel, your laboratory and exploratory works, it's parallel to sort of, we call it the factory of machine learning. And those two work together so that you can do this sort of test and learn before you go and put it against millions of impressions on your website. And then the last is your ability to act. So this is the great part about machine learning is it has connectivity that you probably haven't seen before. Like your ability to cross the bridge between a digital and analog world is here. So when I was at Dell, I had I used to work for Karen Quintos, and there was a use case that we had there where Michael's daughter called tech support, called the call center, and they didn't know who she was. And you can imagine how that went. So she was on the website, she was trying to figure out what was going on with her laptop, and anyway, needless to say, she called tech support and they didn't know her. And that didn't go over too well. So we got a phone call and said, how are we going to connect the call center activity to a website so that we know who this person is at every touch point? And the only way we were able to do that is to bring in machine learning applications so that it can connect to a digital and analog channel. It can understand things like speech recognition and text analytics to bring that data from the call center to the website and vice versa. So it was interesting, and that's your ability to act on it and act on it very rapidly. The other changing thing is analytic teams, thankfully, you know, we work with some really smart guys here at Epsilon, but you know, a lot of companies I go into and we talk to them about machine learning, and the first thing the analytics group says is, well, where's my job going? What am I going to be doing? I guess you guys don't need me anymore. And that's actually the opposite. We probably need more of you. We're going to talk a little bit about resources here in a moment, but the skills are getting harder and harder to find for this. And what it's done is it's actually increased the need for analytics even more. Your ability to do exploration in a rapid way is great, but we don't want to put that, like your learnings, onto a website Just because you found some like unique little anomaly, you don't want to go test that against a million impressions on your site. So you run this in like a simulated environment, which that's what we call a simulation. We put it in a simulated environment. And then once that's been proven out, you bring that over into the factory. And then it's touchless. You can walk away and you allow the machine to do all the interacting, self-learning, and it adapts on its own. So I'm going to stop here for a moment. Is anybody here? I know everybody's in loyalty, but does anybody have their hands in content creation? Okay. If there's anything you take away from this entire thing, there's really two things, two long poles in the tent. I'll say one is data and one is content. And these are the two areas that are impacted the most by machine learning. And we've already talked a little bit about data. Content, and I know Emily showed you the barren desert, right? With, hey, there's no content out here. And that's true. I work with a cruise line company, and we did this really amazing program with them where we were using deep learning to understand what's inside of the images that you can see that are going to be put into the emails. And we built special models called like the psychology of color, and it was really intense. And we learned a lot about their content, but immediately they were like, we're out of content. Like within probably 2 or 3 campaigns, the machine learned everything it could about every person it had and every piece of content they had. So all of a sudden we've got this content team going, what do we do now? Well, the great news was they were like, finally, we can do what we were hired for. They've spent so much time. They didn't know what to do. They were like frozen. I pictured the deer in the headlight look because they're so accustomed to focusing on building the process from end to end and getting all the legal approvals that go along the way, building the campaign out, getting the loyalty program set up. Like they can be removed from that entire process now. And so now content developers and agencies can actually go do what they were paid to do, which is go build more content. So think of that as like putting all the content into a library. Don't worry about how pretty the email is or the campaign is. Focus on building more content. The machine will do the assembly process for you. And that's really what happened. And they didn't know how to take that. They were like, wow, we can actually go build more content. So it's been great. The other thing is it's very dynamic. So I mentioned earlier that I work with a large airline. We've been doing that for about 5 years now. And we work on their Mileage Plus loyalty program, and they said, they send out a bunch of emails, and they had no idea that they could do this. And I think it's about 2 million emails a day go out, and they're all the same thing. The difference is your points balance and your name and stuff like that. So they thought they were personalized because it said Mark Secrece at the top versus, Emily or whatever. But the content below was all static. Well, now there's no 2 emails that ever go out that are ever the same anymore. The machine will literally go in and pick the template styles. It picks, where they are in the loyalty process for nurturing. It actually goes and picks all the content. It finds the partner programs, and it does all the assembly work for them. So there's no 2 emails that go out from them anymore that are ever the same. So I spent some time this year working with Gartner. Sorry, Emily. I had a research project with them out in California where we were struggling to find really good resources. So this will be another area of change in the business. I was struggling. It took 3 months to hire 2 people. We had a lot of hand raisers. Don't get me wrong, we had like 3,000 applicants, but really, again, going back to what I said earlier, that if anybody's ever written an algorithm, that their resume now says data scientist and machine learning expert if they've ever written something. Like my son just graduated college as a game design engineer, and he's like, can I put machine learning on there? I was like, no, you cannot put, just because you know somebody, it doesn't mean you can put that on there. So anyway, we came away from the research project calling it the unicorn because everybody's chasing this unicorn. It's not hard to find resources that exist in 2 of these. Somebody that maybe knows analytics and technology, or somebody in the business that might know business strategy and understands software. But it's rare to find somebody that understands analytics, business value, and technology all together. And these are where those resources sit, and we need to find those. Get them trained. These are people that you guys are going to be looking for. And this is where partners like Epsilon come in to help. But these are the people that you're going to be chasing. You'll be chasing those unicorns for a while. But they're out there. It just takes time. And so we worked with Gartner a little bit to really go about finding these unicorns. So let's talk a little bit about some capabilities. And I want to break it down a little bit more so that you understand how we think about machine learning here at Epsilon. So Emily touched a little bit on this. I want to touch on it a little bit more. So I see machine learning. Let's think back to the Tesla that I talked about. Okay. So the Tesla has 3 pieces of its infrastructure that we think about in machine learning. The first is machine learning itself, and that is really analytical algorithm models. All that's sort of hyper data production, everything that's behind the scenes. This is sort of the black box that Emily was talking about because it's really hard to see what's going on behind the scenes here. There are applications, and we'll talk about it here in a minute how to do that. The other piece is cognitive. I'm not sure if people have heard the term deep learning or cognitive, but I like to talk about this as think of it as like sensory analytics. What you can hear, what you can see, what you can touch, smell, taste, anything like that. So it's everything from natural language processing to speech to text, voice recognition. So if anybody's got an Alexa or something like that at home. And then AI, I like to think about it as like a sort of a consumerized product, like a chatbot or your phone. Like I'm sure anybody's got Siri or Cortana they were talking about earlier. Any of those kinds of things that you can actually interact with. So when you go back to the car, the Tesla, the car itself is sort of an AI feature. You can touch it, you can drive it. It has interaction on it, touch screen. It has all the cognitive capabilities. So it's got LiDAR, radar, sensors. It can read and see the road. And it all has all the machine learning. And so, underneath all of that is its own onboard diagnostics that can understand and depict what's going on as you're driving and process and learn. So why is this important is because think about sort of classic analytics approach to marketing. In the old days, you'd get data, you'd mine the data, you would run analytics, and then you'd have sort of a data scientist process that and provide some insights. The difference, so thinking back to that lab and factory approach, this is sort of the factory approach to it, right? Like the Tesla. You don't want to have your Tesla drive up to a stop sign or the back of a semi-truck, as Emily put it, read a sign, and then you have to offload that data to a data scientist and hope they can send it back to you fast enough to get the car to stop, right? You want it to happen instantaneously. And so that's the difference between sort of that factory and lab approach. So these are they're busy slides, but that's okay. I have one for each, and I'm sure they'll get the slides out to you guys later. But again, machine learning, it's really around decision sciences, next best action. So when you're trying to do things like product personalization on an email, or run improved nurture programs in a loyalty program, or points balances, or this is where machine learning comes into play. It's all the kind of behind the scenes data crunching that you want with all those analytical models from all those really smart guys that I try to get on my team. That's really what this is all about here. This is all kind of think of it as like a fabric of intelligence that exists between your data and your channels. So at the top, you might have all your channels that you can communicate to. And then below you have all the data. In between is like this fabric of intelligence that can reach out and talk to any of those channels to provide insights. On the cognitive side, here are some other things that you see. If anybody's heard of like natural language processing, that's been around for a really long time, and speech to text, text to speech. Anybody talk to your phones, that's all sort of in here. There's some other interesting things that you'll find in here, things like video recognition, so being able to see what's inside a video. We built one in here called the psychology of color. Really interesting. My head engineer, Kevin, he's a photographer by nature, and one thing that these machines do is they can read color. So like if you wanted to see what's inside of an image, it can do that. But it knows that it sees blue or red or pink or green or whatever, but it doesn't actually know what that means. So we actually took the adaptation of a study done back in the late 80s and early 90s around the psychology of color, which is like, what's the meaning behind a color and what does it mean to people? And we taught machines on starting to understand what that actually means to them. So why do people like to see red and blue and green? So when we tested that with our cruise line company, you really start to see that people want to see waterfalls with the, kind of the clouds with the blue, or do they like to see sunsets? Maybe it's the reds and purples and oranges that they like to see. And why is that important to them? And we've taught the machines to kind of figure out how to do that. That's all kind of in this area. It's all about kind of deep learning and cognitive learning. And then AI, again, these are things that, like we talked about, you can touch. So you got Alexa, Google Home, IoT, smart trackers. Hopefully I'm getting my steps. I probably should come down here a little further if I want to get more steps. Huh? So, you got voice assist, chat bots. So has anybody in your business talked about chat bots or any kind of like a bot service? I know we did with GM for a little while. Yeah, a couple people? Okay. They're actually pretty cool. Like Kayak Travel's got one that's really, really interesting. They're a great way to improve like an additional channel to add to your marketing suite of tools. The problem is like people abandon the bot pretty quick if it doesn't understand you that well. So you have to make them pretty smart. Bank of America has a pretty good one right now called Erica that's pretty intuitive and understands you pretty well. But it has to work really well. It has to get answers right. Otherwise, we find that the abandon rate on bots are pretty high. So let's talk a little bit about the stack. This is actually pretty busy, but I think what I wanted to highlight here was, again, sitting between data and your channels is really an orchestration layer. So traditionally, an orchestration layer in typical marketing would be things like loyalty programs and campaign management, and it's talking to all the channels. Now you can see in the green, this is like sitting side by side to loyalty and campaign is now an entire suite of machine learning applications that can orchestrate all that intelligence out to those channels. And it's truly one of those, like, again, I want to emphasize this because it's really important. Your ability to bridge, physical and, digital worlds is here. I mean, Emily touched on that, and that's true. It has the connectivity to talk to anything. So you can really start improving, in the prior day, if you wanted to do targeting, you'd have to buy like a website targeting tool like maybe Adobe Target, and then your email provider probably had a targeting tool, and then your call center, probably your CRM application on the call center had something, right? And then you're working to try and bring either the data together to stitch that, or you have some really smart engineers that know how to plug sort of like Adobe into Salesforce, into Oracle, But that's with machine learning, you don't have to do that. You can kind of create a hub and spoke where the hubs of intelligence sits in one place, and you can create that network out into those different channels. And this is just a quick glance at like what we have here. We have our own app, we've built our own environment for Epsilon, and you can kind of see, we're consuming all kinds of data, staging it, running it through some different processes that we use. One is more for like deep engineering, what we call code, and you might have seen some of these names before. H2O is a pretty like common in-memory decisioning platform that we use. And then, we have our own decisioning science. So Emily talked about the black box. So one thing that we like to do is build a GUI on top of machines so that the business can pull some levers. If you want to, apply rules to something, or you want to improve your business goals and have competing arbitration, like if somebody wants in a loyalty program, you're trying to improve, say, maybe margins over acquisition, and you wanted those as competing values, you can put those in there. And then it has all kinds of, connective tissue there that we talked about. And then we surround that application by everything that Epsilon does. So we surround it by a set of open source model libraries that we might get from something like TensorFlow or Scikit-learn, all of our Python. And then on the right side, you can kind of see that, we can connect every single data source at Epsilon, including our, loyalty, email, whatever we have, Conversant. And then on the other side, we connect this application to all of our platforms. So the loyalty platforms, Harmony, Unite. So we make sure that, again, that it's well embedded into our product strategy and roadmap. So I have one case study in here, and then I actually think if I have time, I'll chat about the second one, which is United a little bit. But so, personally, I think like loyalty is a great place to play. You guys are actually, there's a few areas within the business that's a little challenging. We'll talk about that as sort of getting started. But loyalty is actually one of the easier ones to get your feet into the pool for machine learning. There we go. These are common ones that I've run into with a lot of my clients. So these are like, you guys probably see this all the time. These aren't like super challenging, but these are like 5 areas right now that like every client that I work with in the loyalty space asks me, can we start doing machine learning for? Like, acquisition programs to get people into a loyalty program. How do you acquire them? How do you move them from one area of your business into the loyalty program? I've got some banks that are trying to do that. Accruals and redemption. So as you're in the loyalty program and you're trying to get them to engage and accrue more points, I worked with Sally Beauty for a little while, and they said they have customers that they get like, they spend 200 points, you get like $20 free. I don't know, something like that. I can't remember what it was. But they were just giving that to everybody. So what they were doing was they were taking high value, high margin people and cashing them out early because they were taking the $20 and running, when really what the machine found was, hey, you should have proactive outreach messaging to try and get them to accrue more points. Try and encourage them to stay longer because there's better things coming. It can actually, the machine can find the people in your loyalty program that are going to cash out no matter what, right? But you want to try and find that targeted rich audience that are going to drive more revenue and margin for your brand. And on the flip side, for redemption, the same sort of thing. Like, when is the best time to get someone to cash out on stuff or spend points or use their gift cards or what have you, right? And you want to try and make sure that, through that nurture track program, you're actually, targeting them in an accurate way. And machines can actually find that out pretty simple. The other two are churn. I'll put it churn/risk. People that are likely to abandon your brand, probably abandon your loyalty program. Again, maybe there's opportunities for some proactive outreach programs for you to get out there and target them immediately. And the last one is just win back. Anybody that's already left, and how do you get them back? And so these are 5 key areas that we like almost every loyalty program I work on. These are the 5 that always come up every time. There's some other kind of unique ones around. We talked last night a little bit about like spend velocity and trying to analyze like their overall value to the brand, and bringing in things like customer experience metrics into the mix of the fold of data to see, is keeping them around. Like a question I asked the cruise line, they said they have a reward program. I said, well, what's your goal? They said, well, they call it heads and beds. We need every bed on that cruise line filled at any cost. And I was like, so you have these people that travel with you all the time, professional travelers, spend, like the average cruise was like $15,000 per ticket. I'm like, they'll spend tons with you, but you're willing to give away a bed for like $300 on that same cruise? I said, what if I could tell you I could make you twice as much money, but the ship sailed half full? And they just looked around the room like, we've never been asked that question before. But that's what, is it okay to let a customer go if they're offering really no value? They're there, they're going to buy the cheap discounted ticket, they're going to get on board, they're just going to go and use up your free alcohol tickets, they're not going to spend any money at the casino, they're not going to buy any retail on board. You may want them because you got the head in the bed, but it's just a question that can be answered very simply using machine learning, and that was what we asked them. I disappointed. I hate to tell you, they still wanted to put heads in beds. I tried to get them to do it the other way, trying to target rich people for those cruises, but they just couldn't move away from that. But anyway, that's the kind of things that you start thinking about within the brand. Is it okay to, at this bottom piece, churn and win back? Is it okay to just let someone go?
While you're doing that, quick question. So
Yeah.
on the cruise line, they have a concern where, if I paid a lot of money and had to have full cruise ship, is that a good thing for me because I have space, or does it make people think, hey, what's wrong with this cruise?
Well, it's a great question. That's one of the things we talked to them about. I think we did a really long program with them around journey mapping, and I actually went out and they asked us during that process to understand more about their passengers. We did interviews, and we actually went and interviewed the people on board, and we interviewed travel agents to learn more about it. And 99% of them would say they would rather it not be a full ship. They just would rather have more privacy, more room, more things to do. But it's interesting in the travel business. Again, like I said, I work with airline, hotel. They want everything maxed to capacity, and sometimes it's at the cost of customer experience for dollars. And for things like machine learning, you can quickly get to, I can make you the same amount of money, but the plane doesn't have to be full if you don't want that, right? And so it became, for the cruise line, it was a very challenging thing. It was weird to see the CMO and all his management staff just look around the table when I asked that question when nobody had an answer. I thought they would have talked about that sort of stuff. But their goal was to constantly, get those people in there. I felt like it was diluting the brand a little bit because they had these really rich, immersive experiences. Like this brand will actually, there was a use case where a lady, they were at port, and the lady lost her wedding ring. She just got married and she was playing with it, I guess, and it fell overboard. And they sent scuba divers in for her to go get it, and they found it. But it was that's sort of this all-inclusive, and now you're going to bring people on that are like professional cruisers for $300, and they're just going to eat up all the food in the buffet line and all. Like, you're mixing those two together in the brand. You could separate them if you wanted to, and we were able to show them that, but they just didn't. I think it was their business goals that they had were more important than that learning. But thanks. So a couple of clients would talk about, so I've done this was actually part of the research study I did, and we worked with eBay a little bit. So have you guys seen all the fill your cart with color, the sort of new ad campaign? So in this approach, they took on some ML AI technology during this when they did this. And you can see the bottom of their stages of their loyalty life cycle. So you can kind of see some of their stages. They really wanted to get sort of to the one-to-one. I think Emily touched on, I really love it, like one to moment. I mean, I think that's an amazing way to look at it, because one-to-one is actually really easy for a machine to figure out. But it is the one to moment, especially when you're thinking of loyalty programs, that can be a little bit more challenging. But it's super important to get to. And so these are some of the things that they learned through their process as they switched over. They said, I can't bring numbers, but we'll just say their numbers look pretty good. So, they're trying to compete against the Amazons of the world. So I worked for Dell, so I know I can raise my hand. But has anybody talked to their leadership and all of a sudden their brand's like, I want to be like Amazon? Anyone? I know I worked at Dell, so the Dell guys, you can raise your hand, I know. Well, I try to tell people, no, you don't. Amazon's actually great, nothing wrong with it, but I have a daughter, and the moment she's on my Amazon Prime account, it's Britney Spears CDs for a week, because it's last click attribution. It's not machine learning, it's just following what you're clicking on and then serving up similar items, right? That's not really machine learning. Those are just some algorithms that were created. So
same with Netflix before they introduced profiles.
Yes, yeah. And Netflix, I don't know if you read, they could get worse. That's where my son works now. He works at Netflix, and I'm like, you better tell these guys to fix the problem. But they're actually going to talk about ad serving Netflix shows during the show you're watching, sort of like a commercial. And I was like, please don't test that with me, because I already pay for non-ads. I don't want to see. But anyway, going back to this, you can see that these are some of their sort of gains. True one-to-one messaging. Obviously, they started with product recommendations. So unlike Amazon, they do have a little bit of Amazon experience in here that we looked at on their homepage, but it is more catered towards you. It is trying to figure you out as an individual user and profile to get to having a more personalized website. So if you haven't spent any time on eBay lately, I'd encourage you to go do it and see what it's like. They're also the multi-channel marketing. So like we talked about, your ability to connect the channels fairly easy. On the digital side, it's really easy. But on things for these guys, it's like shipping and vendors and stuff like that. They're able to connect those channels a little bit easier. I'm gonna skip over search because, in all honesty, I didn't spend much time with them on their search stuff. But the other two we did, which was analytics for everyone. So this goes back to my lab. And you probably saw on the diagram I had of Epsilon's machine learning platform, you saw code and no code. No code is basically somebody like me can just go in and do data science, right? It's software that drag and drop GUI interface. You don't actually need to write any code at all. You don't need to know Python or R. You can just go in and do your own data analysis. And that's what they're doing. They're using software like that allows them to give the business rich analytics without having to be superstar data scientists. And last one was they're getting into the bot world as well. So now they have an opportunity for a new channel and a new line. They're also doing some RCS messaging. I'm not sure if everybody's sort of familiar with that. So they're going down that path. They're going to do some SMS, but they're also going to move into some RCS messaging. So which is sort of your rich content. So that you can see here's eBay, big brand name, kind of reaping some of the benefits that we've already talked about. One of the other brands that I didn't throw in here because I wasn't sure how much time we'd have. I think I'm doing okay, right? That's right. Is United Airlines. We've been working with them for a really long time, and we've connected. I mean, you can't even go to the brand anymore without connecting. They're being impacted by their machine learning application. So we built a machine learning application for them. For a number of years now. So you can show up at the airport, at the kiosk to get your boarding pass. You can go online, do your booking there. You can go to the mobile site. It doesn't matter. Email marketing, you can't, even the call center, you can't touch United without actually bypassing through that machine learning application. And what they're really trying to do is things like flight recommendations, help you with flight search. So if you're ever on the site and you see things like flights recommended for you, that's all going through their machine learning stuff. Ancillary products, so things like upsell, cross-sell. And they're going to be launching something new called Travel Inspiration, which is more about, places maybe like the bucket list idea where maybe you haven't been places, and they're going to try and serve up some things around that. We also do things called seat mapping, which is optimizing every cabin on every flight in America. So that's all running through their machine learning application. So again, it's sort of a one-stop shop hub for, when you engage with the brand, they don't want to lose you anymore. Like before, they each, and what's interesting is they're still siloed. Those businesses still exist in a siloed way. And we didn't want to come in and try and rip out like, my United guys didn't show up today. They laugh at me if I told them this, but they, when that merger went through with Continental, like their booking system still has like green screen terminals. I'm like, I'm not trying to replace any of this stuff. What we're going to do is create an environment that can talk to all of those applications. But I have no desire to try to rip out your green screens. But anyway, they, so that's the best way to handle that versus trying to replace every application to something sort of more modern. Now what they can do is as they go through that, if they want to rip out their ESP or they want to find something else for their website, which they recently did a new content system, you don't lose all that layer of intelligence. You can plug and play directly into what's already existing there.
How do you think eBay does on the activities that they work with machine learning to deliver to the customer experience?
I'm sorry, say the first, I didn't.
What's your sort of grade for the eBay?
I'd definitely give them an A for what their roadmap looks like. Where they are when I was there, it's probably more like C+.
I was going to shop on eBay on a regular basis, and the machine learning results that seem to be are not.
Yeah, I'd probably say it's more like a C+, but we spent time talking to them about their roadmap and where they're going, and you heard Emily talk a little bit about this. Like, they did what she said, like start small, start with easy things, achievable things, something that's going to have a proven ROI, and then you can move into the harder stuff. Like they really want to get into the whole idea of fill your basket with color is they really want to try and do what we were talking about, which is the psychology of color, understanding what people really like and what's important to them, brand recognition. And so like we built these things called facet models. So think about you go and you take photos of your kids or your family and you put them in Google, and Google will auto tag them, but you can tag your own photos too. So if you've ever used Google Photos, you can just go out and type in house and it'll show you every house that you've ever taken a picture of. That's just tagging, right? We call it facets, but what we're doing is for different brands that they work with, we're creating facets. Like what's the intent and the meaning behind that brand? What does Nike actually mean to someone? I mean, yeah, we know it's a shoe, but like what does it mean? Or Reebok or something like that. And helping them build like a library of those so that the machine has additional metadata to learn from. And that's where their sort of roadmap's going. But right now, yeah, I'd say an A for effort, but it's right now probably a C for execution. Yeah, exactly, yep. Yeah, they'll get there though. If they stay that course, I believe they will. Like I was a little leery when I worked with United. They had the same kind of vision. They called it their marketing blueprint, and they centralized an organization called their optimization team. They centralized a team that this was all their mission was. They were going to be a disruptive team in the business, and they've stayed true to it. 5 years later, they're still honing away at that. So, I think if you get a good vision and something put in place and you get executive sponsorship behind you, you can make that work. So I just want to talk a little bit about how to get started. And we can close there and then, any questions, I guess. But think crawl, walk, run. I know that's like an overused term, but let's use it anyway. So let's talk channels first. So easy ways to execute. Loyalty programs are easy. Email programs are easy. Direct mail is easy. And so why did I pick on some of these? Well, because batch processing is easy. So when campaigns are run in batch or programs are run in batch, or maybe even triggered somewhat, but they're not sort of like a website where you're pinging that site every day, it's easy to deploy, test. It won't feel as scary for you guys, right? Like I usually try to recommend to most of my clients when they're like, oh, this feels really weird, we want to do it, but where do we? Like I usually start with email or loyalty, but these are, direct mail is an okay place to, direct mail is a little bit iffy just because you got to have attribution tracking and the machine has to have feedback to learn from. So if you can't get any kind of data back from the direct mail channel, then it can be challenging. But these are great places to start. Walking, you're starting to get into more digital, high speed, environments like a website, a mobile application, more messaging services, like an SMS or something like that. This is where the reason that I usually put this more in a walk is you have to account for things that you don't normally account for in other programs, like latency on the site, any disruption that you have for things like merchandising, and you can't, you don't want to crash a sales channel or something like that. And then sort of the run is more like, it's not that they're hard to integrate into, it's just more challenging from a business. So something like a call center, you can imagine machines want to learn. So now you've turned, all your machines learn from is all digital interaction. Now it has to learn from human interaction because it now has to start tracking what agents do, call center agents, right? So you can imagine, like, there's a disruption that's going to go on there. You might have these sales agents that do cherry picking, right? Looking for the best sales. Well, they're negatively training the machine on what to do because they're not even paying attention to what recommendations are out there. So it's a little bit more challenging because you have to go through like a training and adoption period with call centers. Sort of on the machine learning side, like what kind of things, everyone starts with product recommendations. Like that's pretty easy. Things like subject line testing and loyalty programs, you saw I put acquisition. Like these are all kind of easy things for machines to figure out. When you get into more of the cognitive stuff where you want to do content recognition, video recognition, serving up, dynamic ad banners, all of that sort of gets a little bit more challenging. We have United is now on their third phase of this program for email. So it started with, it was just going to select products and choices. Phase 2 was product choices and content. So we've got templates and content and partner offers, and it's shuffling them all. Now what they're doing, which is pretty awesome, is they're actually dynamically building the content on the fly. So you might have like a background image and you can superimpose, say, a woman on one and a guy on another, or a mountain range on one and a beach on another, right? And so they're able to even break the content out even further in that library that we talked around and allow machines to kind of even assemble content for you. So they're on their third phase of that. It's looking pretty cool. And then last one is when the variables are very minuscule, it takes a little while for machines to learn, like time windows and pricing logistics. So you imagine if I talked to one of my retailers and they said, oh, we can price all the way down to the penny. And I was like, imagine like if the shirt was just $5. Like think about every iteration between 1 penny and $5 that a machine's gonna have to try and learn from on one item. So you give me a SKU catalog of like 10,000 products, like it could take a long time for a machine to figure out what's the best price for every person. So that can be challenging. So what we're doing with like the seat stuff at United is more of like bundling of stuff, right? You're finding sort of categories of pricing that they fit into, versus all the way down to the penny level. So those kinds of things are a little challenging. But I will say, what we're doing is becoming more of a core foundation or like a building block here at Epsilon. Like machine learning, it'll be hard for you to probably run into any of our application teams. Rick's gonna talk about it. Like we're embedding machine learning into pretty much everything that we're doing right now. So it is becoming that core building block, yeah.
How does voice interactions fit in this space?
So,
Call it on the eBay slab and
yeah, I'd probably put it more towards like walk and run, maybe even more run, because voice is a translation. Like you got to translate voice to text and metadata, and there's also within the voice there's intent. So I think maybe I mentioned this to you last night when we were talking. Is when I worked at Dell, we did some social analytics. So think of social similar to voice. And somebody put on the social listening command center was like, Dell's XPS is badass, but it saw it as negative sentiment. So you have to like train a machine to understand what badass actually means, right? Same thing with speech, right? If you're translating speech, as we all know in America, everybody uses slang. So, we're gonna have to figure out, teach a machine what twerking means or something, right? So when they're on a call center and you're trying to translate that to data, we actually, you're going to have a way of, sort of like a data scientist to actually create those models to translate that for you. So it is a little bit more complicated.
So she mentioned that a relevant percentage of the country has voice devices in here, but
yeah,
you intentionally leave it off because.
No, I just didn't have it on there. No, I probably just missed it, but yeah. No, there's a few places where machine learning probably that if I were going to leave anything off the list that is fairly challenging enough that, I would say tackle all this first and save these later. One is machine learning for social. So people think that they can consume a lot of social data, and we've done that. Like we've taken unstructured social data, run it through a big data mart, and crunched it through machine learning, and it has not much impact. Like each model has what they call a model accuracy score. It's how accurate it can target what it's trying to make a decision on, and it's minuscule on how much it can move, because a person, like, it's trying to understand intent of what there was being talked about in the social chat, and typically it's after a purchase or after an engagement. Like, no one's going ahead of time, okay, I'm really excited about this product, and then they go buy it. Like, it's usually, I bought the product, now I'm really excited, right? And so it's usually you've kind of missed the opportunity to do the sale because they've already purchased it, and then they've went and posted or tweeted about it. So that's a little challenging. I mean, you can do it, but you've got to really mine the data and use tools like something maybe like Radian6 or something to really get into the social listening side of it. The other one is like media ad buying. So ad bid desks are fairly challenging to use for machine learning because it's a very anonymous world out there. So when people are doing ad buying, like things like on television, set-top boxes, all that, you don't always know who's watching or viewing at that time. And so machines are trying to get to know you as a person. Like, again, it's even beyond one-to-one, like Emily said, right? It's even more advanced than one-to-one. And when you have no idea who the person is, it's super challenging. So machines end up using things like, lookalike models to determine who's actually there. And so it's not as effective as the true one-to-one. So hopefully, Randy, that answered your question. Okay, cool. Anybody? This is really, I think, it for me. Questions, anything? Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.